What's going on, guys? It's Jordan de Jong here, and today I want to talk to you about why property prices increase. Most people would say simple economics, either supply or demand, where others would say it's all auction hype, but there are in fact many different ways that property prices can increase. Before we get into it, let's just make it known that property prices do decrease as well. The old saying that I grew up with, that property prices double in value every 7 to 10 years, is most definitely not true for all property. All submarkets go through their individual cycles at different times, and there are some big impactors that we'll get into that squeeze these markets and in turn decrease prices. Us Aussies have had 20 plus years of very strong economic growth. All the generations before us have only seen property prices increase here in Australia, and I think my generation specifically just presume that property prices will continue to grow at the rate they always have, because we haven't seen it any other way, and we've always been told that we are different as a country. Although I'm not a property bear and preaching a 40% drop like some of the doomsayers out there, I do like to take the time and listen to why they think we could see such drops. And along the way, I've learned some pretty useful information about what impacts housing prices. So let's dive into them. This video isn't going to be about specific attributes to look out for in a property that's going to increase its value over time. This type of property is what we would classify as an A-grade investment property, and if it's the type of video that you're looking for, you can watch my previous playlist up here. We'll start at a very top economic level of supply and demand. Essentially, as the theory goes, when there's multiple people all after the same property, then there's an increase in demand, and there's only a supply of one property. And this leads to a competitive environment where one party is trying to outbid another. I've recently read David Lindsay's book, Australia Boom to Bust, The Great Australian Credit and Property Bubble, and I couldn't explain an auction scenario better myself, so here's an extract out of the book. In the auctions I've attended, I've rarely seen a registered bidder rush to the first bid. The silence is momentarily uncomfortable. Then the auctioneer will make a small joke to relax the crowd, and someone finally makes the first bid. After that, it's off to the races with the first home buyers. 600,000 yells the first bidder. The auctioneer notes down that the bid is really on the low side, but let's start with $600,000 to see where it takes us. 3 other young bidders jump in. 610, 620, 640, 650, 660, 680, 690. In a matter of 15 seconds, the bidders have pushed the price up by $90,000. In come the property investor bidders. $720,000, and all the heads turn to the person who just bid $30,000 higher, and it's adios to those first time buyers. The bidding continues, and bidders ranging between the ages of 40 and 55. 730, 740, 750, 760, 770. The auctioneer is having a field day. Good bidding, he says to the previous bidder. 780, 800, 810, 825, 830, 840. Now we're down to just 2 bidders. 850, 855, 860, 870, 875, 880, 882, 885. The people are shaking their heads in disbelief. Then the 2 bidders start to slow down their bid making. 887, 889, and then the more confident bidder raises his hand. 891, and there's a very long pause, and the auctioneer adds some pressure. Sir, can I get 895 from you? Ladies and gentlemen, are we all done? Going once, going twice, and the hand goes up. 895, 900, and it's like people have seen a ghost. 901, 902, 903, 904, 906, 907, and the tension is out of this world, and neither bidder wants to look like a cheapskate. But they do have their financial limits, which they've probably passed $80,000 ago. 908, 909, 910, it hurts just to watch. This is just insane, the woman behind me starts to mutter. 911, 912, can I get a bid from you, sir? The auctioneer demands from one of the bidders. He then goes on. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, for the 3rd time, are we all done? Going once, going twice, going, and the hand goes up. 913, 915, $2,000 more than the bid, and this has got to send the other bidder into submission, but not so fast. He goes for it. 916, 916, 500, 917, 500, 918, 919, 920, 921, 921, 500. Going once, going twice. Sir, can you make another bid? Unless you've seen an auction get to this point, you can imagine the pressure of just being an observer. What the experience must feel like for these 2 bidders is unfathomable. They've put all of their heart and emotion and debt into this. And then going, 922, 922.50, 923. One of the bidders can't stand still. He looks like he's gonna have a heart attack. But just as the auctioneer is about to yell, sold, 923,500, and then immediately the confident bidder backs up with a whopping 924,000. And finally, the other bidder says, you can have it, mate. He's out. Going once, going twice, and sold. Sorry, that was a bit of a long one, but it's a perfect example of an auction in a seller's market where the bidding started at $600,000 and ended at $924,000. That's a $324,000 difference, and many people got burnt along the way. There were plenty of good points in this segment, but the one that sticks out the most is emotion. Also, if you're loving this content, don't forget to smash that like button. Unfortunately, in these heated scenarios, we often let our emotions get the best of us. We get FOMO. We feel like that if we don't get in the market right now, it'll keep rising at $10,000 a week and we'll never be able to get in. We don't want to look like a cheapskate and walk away from the auction with our tails between our legs. So emotion in theory is one of the drivers that increase property prices. And once this happens to one house on a street, all the other comparable houses on the same street are now suddenly being valued at the same level. And even if they don't get achieved, so emotions in theory is one of the drivers to increase property prices. And once this happens to one house on a street, all of the other comparable houses on the same street are now suddenly being valued at the same level. And even if they don't achieve the exact same result, it's often not too far away. However, this driver can only be pushed up continually through the access to credit. If we don't have the ability to pull out large mortgages to pay this amount for these types of properties, then who's paying $924,000 in cash for a property? A very limited amount of people. So although our emotions are flooring the accelerator, we're being fueled by lenders allowing us to borrow large amounts of debt. Our debt to income ratios have risen significantly in Australia since the 1990s, and we seem to be able to always borrow more and more money. So how is this possible? I apologise in advance, it's going to get a little economical from here on out. Initially, some people argue inflation, which is essentially the price of goods and services increasing over time. However, property prices in Australia have grown by 6.9% on average over the last 30 years, and inflation generally sits around 2 to 3%. So although it may have some impact, it doesn't tell the whole story. Others factor in wage growth. So as our incomes increase, so does the amount of debt that we can service, meaning we can afford to pay more in mortgage repayments and therefore increase the amount that we can borrow. However, I would argue that as wage growth has only grown pretty relative to inflation, our cost of living has also increased at the same rate. So although we can afford to borrow more on paper, we sometimes forget to note down on the right side under liabilities that our expenses have also increased. One element close to wage growth that I think has had an impact on increasing amount of debt that we can borrow, historically there's only been one person in the household bringing in income, where today it's quite normal for households to be bringing in double incomes, meaning both partners are working full time. This does technically increase household income pretty dramatically while keeping those expenses relatively the same. Unless of course there's children involved and the childcare expenses start to creep in, which from what I've heard can be quite expensive. So over the last 3 decades, it's become more normal to have both members of the household bringing in income. And this has allowed couples to combine their incomes together and have a much larger serviceability to pay off mortgages, which they've used to purchase nicer properties or family homes and ultimately increase those values. As you can probably tell, there's a clear winner throughout this video, and it's lenders. They are essentially the ones who are calculating how much debt we can afford to pay and allow us access to these enormous mortgages at a mass scale throughout Australia. Without this access, we couldn't continue to increase property prices at that current rate. As consumers, generally not intertwined in economics, lenders are the final stop. They're the ones who we deal with and they're all that we really see, but behind the curtain there are some big players pulling the strings of these lenders, including the RBA, APRA and the government. The RBA can pull the cash rate lever up and down as they see fit. However, this has trended down since the 1990s and today is at the historical low of 0.25 basis points. Essentially, this means it costs less in interest to service a mortgage, which in turn decreases our expenses, increasing our surplus cash flow and allowing us to be able to borrow more money. APRA has also had a hand in being able to impact markets. In fact, so much so that they theoretically caused the recent market downturn between 2017 and 2019 by putting tighter restrictions on lenders and cracking down on responsible lending. The government, on the other hand, has numerous levers that they can pull. First home owner grants, capital gains tax, negative gearing policies. These are only some of the things that we've just seen recently. During the coronavirus, they've injected huge stimulus into the economy through wage subsidies such as JobSeeker and JobKeeper. This prevents mass unemployment and allows people to keep paying their mortgages. On top of this, there are many other levers that they can pull to sustain property values, including abolishing capital gains tax, stamp duty, land taxes, and they're just some of the big ones, but there's so many more. So essentially, there are multiple entities with their hands in the pie, and although from a boots on the ground perspective, it just looks like a competitive environment that push up prices, realistically, it's credit policy that fuels these environments. I want to know what you guys think is the biggest driver of property prices. Leave it down in the comment section below. As always, seek your own professional financial, legal, taxation, and property investing advice for your current situation. These videos are just my opinion and are general in nature and should never be considered as personal advice. If you're keen for more content, make sure you subscribe and smash that notification bell so you don't miss a video. And until next time, happy house hunting.